Hi, welcome. It's July 9th. It's great to be here, and I hope you're having a great day. Or if it's morning, I hope your day will go wonderfully. We have two more Psalms today, and again, they're both anonymous in the sense we don't know exactly who wrote them. The first one for sure is a hymn, and relates, and probably is a very ancient psalm because it relates very closely to 1 Chronicles chapter 16, where David offers a psalm of thanksgiving, and you can see a lot of correlation to it. And it's really talking about remembering all the works of God as he brought the people forth. And it does go through this whole process of saying what God did with his people, ultimately bringing them out of Egypt. And it says a number of things to us today. Actually, both of these Psalms do. And I just want to throw some things out at you for your consideration, your prayer, and maybe they may touch you in a specific way. But there are several things that hit me. Number one is we seem to have short memories many times. And certainly the people of Israel did too. And it was important, therefore, to, on a regular basis, remember what God has done. As they retell all of the mighty acts of God in their lives. And even in doing that, what we saw is that the people tended to at times turn away and go their own direction. And how true that is for us today. And in many ways, as we go through the year of worshiping together, and even individually, of great importance is that each day we remember all that God has done. And so we look at that. And we say, well, what has God done? And of course, in the Old Testament, everything was based on that covenantal promise of an inheritance, the land of Canaan that God was to give them as he brought his people forth. For us, God has given us a new covenant in his Son, Jesus Christ. And so we not only we don't have to necessarily just look towards something in the future. We already are anchored to something in the past, and that was Jesus coming the first time. The Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 26, and we use this in our communion liturgy sometimes, we hear those words, we proclaim his death until he comes. What we do is we remember what God has done in coming down here and dying on the cross to provide us forgiveness. We are anchored in the truth of that past, of that act on the part of God for us. And we're also, though, looking to the future, and we are looking to one who not only has come, but who will come again. And I think that's kind of interesting. And so what I hear from, even as you look at Psalm 105 today, it's not just what God has done, but what in saving the people. So it's not just what he has saved them from, but it's what God is saving them for. In the case in the Old Testament, it was God is saving them for this land that he is giving to them where they can live and worship him freely. And for us, God has saved us for heaven. And it's a gift that we already possess now in many respects. He has saved us for a life of walking with him, a forgiveness of sins that was dealt with finally once and for all. And ultimately his resurrection dealt with one of our other enemies, and that's death. And that was dealt with once for all. And so as we look at these two Psalms today, I think it's important for us, number one, to always learn to remember what God has done. And then, even as the people remembered how God acted in their lives, when you look at these Psalms, very specifically, do we remember how God acts in our lives? I was just trying to think, what are the signs and wonders in my life that God has done? And there are many of them. But do I take time to recount them? And do I proclaim them and share them with others as well? I think sometimes that's our problem, is we remember and then we don't, though, proclaim them. We remember, and I think we need to not only receive God's gift of grace in his Son Jesus Christ, but then we need to proclaim it and celebrate it. We need to open up that gift, and we need to take it out and use it and wear it. I remember my brother Tom growing up. He would get new clothes, especially new shoes, and he'd leave them in the box and put them in his closet, and he wouldn't wear them for months on end. He just wanted to savor the fact that they were in there and they were new. And that's all well and good, except shoes were meant to be worn. The gift of God's new forgiveness, life, and salvation, that's meant to be worn every day. That's meant to be lived out on a regular basis in our lives. And unfortunately, sometimes we believe the truth of the Scriptures, we receive the forgiveness of sins which God has given us, but we don't then go out and claim that gift and open it up and wear it and use it every day. And I think that's what we're missing out. We don't tell others how our story fits in with God's story. And so I think that's important to learn. I think the other thing in Psalm 106 is that we see, and there are two other aspects I'll share with you quickly. Number one is human nature being what it is. We don't tend to respond until there's a crisis. Whether it's putting a stoplight at an intersection, doesn't happen until there are enough accidents. Ultimately, things had to get so bad in Germany that indulgences got totally out of control, and finally Luther stood up and said no. It seems to me that's the way life operates. We don't want to make change, and we aren't going to move until it's absolutely necessary, until something has happened to precipitate that. And it seems like with the Israelites in Psalm 106, things got bad enough. Finally God acted, and they were sent off into exile, and they were punished, and now they got the message, and then they came back. There's always got to be this judgment from God, and then the people respond. Now, we might say, well, it'd be great if we didn't have to worry about that. But given our sinful nature in this life, we seem to always struggle with that. But I think the good message out of Psalm 106 is, yes, there is judgment, there is God's wrath, but thankfully His mercy has won over beyond the wrath. And so there is always, never, we see in the Scripture, this God offering and sending down His wrath upon His people, and that's the end of it. Always there is something after judgment. In the Old Testament we hear of a remnant, we hear of the people moving forward, we hear of His promise still being carried out, and the same is true for us. In the midst of our sin, God's promises and His grace are still there for us. And so we give thanks for that, and today we remember all He's done for us, not just as we see it play out in history, but in our own lives. What has He done for us, and how do we proclaim that to others? And I'm praying today that God would help me to be ever more willing to proclaim His mighty works in my life, and to look for them in my life on a daily basis, and also that I might be attentive and not let things get to a crisis mode before I return to Him. And that's part of wearing that gift every day and using it and living it. The more we do that, the more we walk with Him, the less crisis modes I think we're going to have to deal with. Things that come along we'll be able to handle. And I'm not talking about the circumstances of life. I'm talking about those times when we turn away and seek our own direction. So just some thoughts for today, and we'll continue through the Psalms over the next few days, and we'll look forward to talking with you again. God's blessings to you.